Hi, in this video we're going to talk about how to use this PoE standard to repeat the PoE for PoE NVR. First, let's take a look at the basic setup. This is the PoE NVR. The port number 1 is connecting to the camera by using this Cat5e Ethernet cable. There's no need for power source at the camera end. The PoE NVR supplies the power for the camera. Now the camera is live. Now let's see what we can get from this PoE standard. This is the 1-in 1-out PoE standard. We got the one input port. Usually it's supposed to connect the cable from the PoE NVR, and one output port will link to the new cable to the camera. This is the range. It's very important to use this range to fasten the ground, especially if we install this PoE standard outside. It will prevent the water snaking into the PoE standard to damage the PoE standard. We also have this bracket. You can have the wall mount and thin rim mount. It's quite simple. Okay, now let me get the second cable. This is the cable you add to the system. First, let me connect the cable to the input of the PoE standard. This is the cable linking to the PoE NVR. Now we got the new cable connect to the output of the PoE standard. And finally, we connect the cable to the camera. Once I connect the cable to the camera, you can see the indicator, power indicator is on, which means the camera is getting the power. You also can see the red indicator start flashing. There's data exchange between the camera and the network video recorder. Now let's move back to the network video recorder. It may take a while before we can see the live video. I think the camera's live. Yes, the camera's live now. It's quite simple, but there's one thing, the PoE standard only can repeat 328 feet. So if the distance is less than about 600 feet, we just need single PoE standard, putting at the middle of the cable, it will work. But can we just place this PoE standard after 328 feet? Probably not. You see, the TCP/IP network is limited to 328 feet. If we just place this PoE standard about 400 feet, the signal will start dropping before this PoE standard can boost up the signal. So it's really better to place the PoE standard before 328 feet. This is the first scenario. The maximum distance between the camera and the PoE standard is less than about 600 feet. What if we need to about 1,000 feet continue run? Let's say the distance between the camera and the PoE NVR is 1,000 feet. In this case, we will need to have second PoE standard. And there's one beautiful thing. We don't need to daisy chain the PoE standard. I mean, technically, we can add this PoE standard at the end of the cable and got another 300 feet. Totally, we got about 1,000 feet. This is one way to work with this PoE standard. But with this setup, we will have two PoE standard sitting at the middle of the cable. If this is outdoor deployment, it's increasing the failure point. We may need to bury these two PoE standard underground, right? This PoE standard has one feature. It allows us to put two PoE standard together to have 1,000 feet continue run. Okay, what's that supposed to mean? I think it's better to remove everything. Let's just set it up. It's more easy to understand. Now I will get away all this cable. And now, with the 1,000 feet continue run, we can place these two PoE standard both ends. This is the first one. We'll place this PoE standard just next to the camera. And I'll use the short punch code to link the PoE standard to the camera. So this is the output port. This is the output port. We connect to the camera. And the long run cable will connect to the input port of the PoE standard. Now let's move to the NVR end. It's a little bit tricky to set up the first PoE standard because we need to flick the output and the input, which means we've got the input face to the another PoE standard. The two input will face each other. So that's very important to flick the PoE standard next to the PoE NVR. Okay, we still need another short punch code to link the output port to the port number 1. Now let's take a look. It may take a while. I can see the indicator is on, the power indicator, also the data indicator is on. It will take a while before we can see the live video on the camera, on the monitor. Let's examine. Okay, we're also getting the data. I think the video is live now because the indicator is start flashing really fast. That means we're getting a live video. Yes, the camera is live again. You see, we can place these two PoE standard both ends and just leave the 1000 feet continue run cable outside. You can bury the cable just whatever you want to do with the cable. It's simply the cable is much more reliable than you put the active device at the middle of the cable. There's one last thing. You see, we just use this two PoE standard to repeat the single port and extend up to 1000 feet. The power consumption we need to consider, because when people design the standard PoE equipment, they're expecting you just use for about 328 feet. That's the specification for the TCP/IP. But now we are getting much more longer, about 3 times longer than the standard PoE. Then we need to consider the power loss. Working with this small camera, it will be fine. There's no problem because it just needs very small power. But if this is the pan-tilt zoom camera, the large camera, you may need to replace this, adding this PoE injector. This is 90 watt PoE injector. It can output 90 watt. This port only can output 30 watt. So it will have enough power for the adapt to the power loss during the long run transmission. Alright, that's all for today's video. If you have any question, please post it in the comment section below. See you next time.